Hi, Jim. Thanks so much. Welcome to Talking Sales. I'm really grateful that you decided to join us and share your knowledge. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, looking forward to joining or looking forward to chatting. Thanks for having me on. I think it should be a pretty good conversation.
Great. Let's jump right into it. Okay, so sales training. It is often overlooked or consists only of some product training and is focused on what reps needs to know to sell more. And actually, we did a small research with SalesON together, which showed that in Poland, most of the sales reps are given only one training a year, which is definitely not sufficient to create any effectiveness or real results. What do you think is the missing link of sales training today?
I mean, that's a broad topic. I think one of the things to keep in mind when we're thinking about training effectiveness, especially with adults, is that you have to deliver training in multiple formats, and you have to have it be consumable in a way where the stuff that you're learning gets reinforced over time. So you described in Poland that sales training is typically done where it's a single multiple hour session and that's it. That's going to have very low effectiveness. Generally speaking, if you're looking at training effectiveness, you go through a training, you'll get a little bit of an improvement, you'll plateau or your decline, and then you need to reinforce that training to get additional usability. So if you're designing a training program, and especially if you're designing a sales training program and you're only doing it once, it's not going to work. You really should be doing both formal and ad hoc training on an ongoing basis, and then particularly making it bite-sized so that your attendees or your cohorts can consume, practice, and rebuild on an ongoing basis, and that's how you actually get some pretty good results in terms of the content being sticky.
Great. So actually, I know you work with a lot of customers across this topic, and you also work a lot with sales enablement specialists and the companies that are trying to implement it. How do findings from this new emerging area, such as sales enablement, influences the way we should think about sales effectiveness training today?
Well, it depends on where you are from a sales enablement perspective. If you have a pretty immature sales enablement function, or if it's pretty new, then enablement as a function should really be looking at, okay, what can I, or how can we arm sales professionals with what they need to best communicate the problems that are solved, the customer problems, and in some areas, some marketing related content as well that gets salespeople in a position to have conversations. So if you're talking about a very immature sales enablement function, the number one priority for that group should be, how can we position our sales professionals to have more conversations and create more organic conversations that aren't product related? And that's a critical piece to think of, because when you look at the vast majority of sales professionals that are doing outreach, their entire outreach is based off of, hey, we do this and it can solve all your problems for you.
Let's jump on a call, right?
Yeah, let's jump on a meeting. And that's not going to work. So if you're building a sales enablement function from the ground up and you have a very immature practice, then the focus needs to be, what are the things that we can leverage to create more authentic conversations to help us determine whether this particular prospect is somebody that is within our ICP or not. And that's creating conversations at scale. If you have a more mature sales enablement practice, really, that function should be sitting at the intersection of HR, marketing, and sales, and being sort of the hub. If we're thinking about a wheel, they should be the hub that connects all three, because sales enablement actually takes the voice of the customer from the marketing group and translates that into how sales should be going to market. And then sales enablement also should be communicating from the field, so the sales rep, to HR in terms of how training should be designed and executed. So it just depends on where you are from a maturity perspective on the role that sales enablement can play and how enablement can influence the sales process depending on how mature the organization happens to be.
So basically what you're saying is like they should be closing the learning loop. So they should be looking at all those three departments and making sure they exchange information and build from each other and the insights once the organization is mature. And when you're only beginning, it's more of a fundamental, hey, let's look outside the product, let's have conversation, know our customer and nail our ideal customer profile, which is crazy interesting because there is so much buildup in between to go from point A to point B, right? That's a crazy amount of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and I want to be clear that foundational stuff should never go away because you're going to have a constant churn of salespeople coming into your organization. So you need to be making sure that you're sound on the fundamentals, and that's that outreach stuff and generating conversations at scale. That should be an ongoing focus, regardless of how mature you are. But to your point about enablement should be closing the loop on training. That's absolutely true. They should sit right in the middle of sales, HR, and marketing, and basically synthesizing all of that information to better prepare sellers to go to market and be effective.
Great. So actually, I have a question around more of the creation of the training programs, because of course, all HR managers and sales managers have this task within their year or the quarter. Hey guys, how can we actually create a program that is not a one-off, not effective training? But you mentioned that more and more companies are leveraging the online training. So which areas sales and HR should mostly focus in terms of creating their programs? So basically, what should they remember to design for success, not for failure, and to twist this circle that we're having right now around?
I think when you're looking at how should programs be designed or what should be designed, the first step is to take an inventory of all the gaps that exist within your sales organization. You have to look at, okay, where are we breaking down in terms of the sales process, in terms of sales methodology, where is the breakdown? Then once you've identified those items, and there's going to be multiple items, you need to prioritize which one is the most important thing to solve. So for example, if one of the common problems that exists is that everybody that is in the selling function is kind of doing their own thing, well, maybe the biggest thing that needs to be done is a standardization from a process perspective, and you train to the process. If the organization is more mature from a methodology and sales methodology and process perspective, then you might be looking at more granular details like how do you execute cold calls, how do you execute cold emails, how do you execute a nurture program. So it really depends on what you've identified as the critical breaking point within the selling organization. If you're looking at, so this is where it gets interesting. If you're an HR group and you're trying to figure out, okay, hey, sales as a function is having a lot of turnover. Well, you need to look at, okay, what are we trying to solve for? Why is this organization having turnover? Is it an issue of quota attainment? Is it an issue of something else? Is it an issue of poor management? So all of those things are going to inform how you design your program to solve the problem that you're dealing with internally.
Perfect. And we touched a bit on that because in today's world, when you have meeting to meeting and you spend your whole day on Zoom talking to customers and then having some internal stuff upon it, simply delivering 6-hour long online training is not engaging. It's not working, it's not effective. And I know that you also do a lot of research in this area. What do you feel is the most effective way today to teach, to create those training for them to be effective and for the sales reps they can benefit from them and really hone a skill, not only get inspired and forget and fall into the old ways?
So there's a couple of different ways that you can approach it. I would guarantee that, or I would say there's a place for a 6 hour long training, and that's probably if you're dealing with very junior reps and you're onboarding them into your organization, and that's very early before they hit the field. That probably has some value. What I would say is if you take that same 6 hour program, if that is what's typical within a region or within an industry, and you have a 6 hour program, record one session of it, break down different pieces in terms of content areas, and make it consumable. So generally speaking, if you can deliver that from a virtual or video format in 15-minute increments, and you build that into your onboarding process, you already have a lot of the work done. You're just basically repurposing that content so it's more consumable on an ongoing basis, and it's on demand. And that's critical. So if you look at training effectiveness, training has to be delivered, practiced, reinforced, and re-delivered for you to continue, building skill. So taking a single session, breaking it up, recording it, breaking it up into smaller pieces that can be consumed at any time, that will help your overall effectiveness. The other thing that needs to be done, and this needs to be pushed down to the managers too, is that there should be a week to week or maybe a month to month cadence of what is the topic that we're going to focus on and drill, or at least practice in our one-on-one sessions or in our group sessions, so that everybody is honing their skills. I think one of the things that organizations mistakenly do is they think training is just an HR function or it's some other function. That's not true. Training might be delivered by learning and development or HR, but it's up to leaders or managers within those functional groups to reinforce and spot check those things on an ongoing basis for the field to become effective or proficient in it. So if we're asking the question, how can you increase training effectiveness? You have to make it consumable. You have to make it on demand. You have to make it repeatable. And then you have to reinforce and drill on an ongoing basis. So if you do those things, you're going to have a much more effective training function or sales training effort than if you're just delivering one training and that's it.
Yeah, you mentioned something that really stuck to me, like on one-on-ones, to like grill this, to like work on it with the team, because what I see is like there's this misalignment. There is a training program that is happening, and there's this real life on one-on-one. When we talk quota, like activities, meetings, and all of that. And actually, what I realized is that managers also need to like insert the purpose why you have to participate in that training. Why is it important? So they have to set up the scene so the reps actually know that the training is not something that done externally, but also a very crucial part, right? So this is crazy important what you just showed us.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that managers need to be careful of when you're looking at how you incorporate training into one-on-ones, training and coaching, I would argue that most of your one-on-ones should be focused in that area versus like a heavy emphasis on activity, because that stuff is really like, it's really not effective if all you're doing in your one-on-ones is talking about, here's what I did last week, here's the meetings that I had. That can be covered in like 5 minutes. So if you have 30 minutes for a one-on-one, you can do the activity check in 5, and then the next 25 should be, or the next 20 could be digging into, what did you see last week that tripped you up? What were your response rates from your emails? What were your response rates from your conversations? If you have that stuff recorded, you can easily refer back to it ahead of time and say, hey, we're going to cover this call and talk through, how you effectively navigate another call like this. That's really where I like spending most of my time in my one-on-ones versus talking about, the activity metric stuff. You can talk about that stuff all day, and you have 52 one-on-ones in a year, 52 conversations about where your activity is for 30 minutes at a time seems like a giant waste of time to me.
Wow, that's a really nice perspective, and you're completely right. Like this could be done on a daily with 5 minutes, or just checking in the data, and
Yeah.
then like actually focusing on feeding forward and analyzing and making sure that there is a progress in what we do, and a change might be the the missing link that we were trying to identify before. Okay, so one closing question. What do you think is the smallest change, really, really small, in the area of sales training that companies should implement today and would be surprised with the results that they could get?
I mean, there's a lot of small things that you can do that is gonna have impact over time. It really depends on where you are from training as a function or sales training as a practice within your organization. I think one of the easiest things that you can do, and just this depends on kind of what the operating rhythm is. If you as a manager or a sales leader within an organization aren't dealing with different um, field level uh, field level items. So how to do an effective cold call, how to overcome objections, how to write an effective email. What are the problems that we solve? What is the problem that the customer is dealing with? If you're not regularly talking about those things and practicing your outreach efforts or your responses to those things every day, you're going to have problems. I mean, I think building in a period of time every single day where you're focusing in on the mechanics of those foundational activities that happen every day, that can have huge impact. It's not particularly sexy or attractive, but it's the fundamentals of the job that you deal with day in and day out that are going to yield the biggest results. I mean, even things like active listening. When somebody says, I feel XYZ, if you're not practicing active listening and teaching your team, whenever somebody describes or says an adjective, this is frustrating. If you're not automatically going back and asking that prospect, well, hey, you said frustrating. I kind of know what's frustrating for me, but what is it about this particular thing that's frustrating for you? Getting in that detail through active listening and just doing something really simple like that over and over again is going to get you much bigger results than just a single training that's delivered every quarter or every year or whatever. It's those basics that are reinforced over the course of a day-to-day basis that's going to yield the biggest results.
Great. Thanks so much for taking the time and sharing with us your experience. If somebody would like to learn more, if they would like to connect or simply know more about your work, where they can go and find you.
So you can find me in any number of places. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So you can connect with me there. I have 2 different podcasts or shows that I run. So I have the Cascading Leadership podcast. You can find me on that handle. I also run the Talent Strategy 60 LinkedIn live show. So you can find me there. I'm also at Circa. So that we're an HR. I'm also at Circa. We're an end-to-end talent strategy solution that focuses, that leads with a DEI first approach to the market. So you can find me there too. So I'm basically everywhere except Instagram.
Great. Thanks so much. And I really encourage all our listeners to go check your podcast. I loved listening to them while I was running. So I can definitely vouch that it's a great place to get some inspiration.